We got packed house. I don't know if there are people standing. I don't know if there are any spare seats around, but you're very welcome to come and crowd in. Could we get some waters, some champagne?
Baby sham? Baby sham?
Baby sham. Hey, I'll have a baby sham.
Jaeger bomb.
We'll get some waters. Don't worry.
We've been talking all morning already.
Alright, well, let's get started. My name's Iain Lee. I write a column in Retro Gamer every month, which is very, very silly, and I've been asked to come and talk about Graftgold. We got Steve Turner, Andrew Braybrook, and Iain Wallington. Round of applause. We are here in part to talk about this book, which is absolutely stunning, and copies are being piled up over there so you can buy afterwards. I think you guys are going to do a little signing as well. It's beautiful, it comes in this gorgeous case, it's weighty, that's the thing. And what was interesting, you haven't seen this before, so I'm sat here listening to you.
It's only come back from the printers this week.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah,
all right.
The printers this week.
So this is it, and we'll kind of go through this, but I thought it would be nice if you kind of, and we've only got 2 microphones, so we'll be passing around, and there'll be plenty of time for questions as well, don't worry. I thought it might be nice if we started down this end and you just introduce yourself, gave a little bit of background so that everybody is kind of aware of who you are and why you're here. Thank you, Steve.
I'm Steve Turner, and I used to work in insurance brokers writing software, and saw what could be done on micros and tried to do it myself, and then took the leap on the Spectrum, and it all kind of kicked off, and very soon got it in the market. But as well as writing the games, in the beginning I used to do the graphics, I used to run the company. When we had our first offices, I did the vacuuming, cleaned the toilets, did the payroll. I did everything as well as writing games.
We'll get to that in a little bit. I want to hear about the toilet cleaning. Andrew, do you want to introduce yourself?
It's a technical task.
I couldn't do it. So I knew Steve Turner from when we were both playing in bands in the Whittam area, and then we ended up playing in the same band because people talk about it all the time. And then one day Steve invited me to come and write computer games with him, so I started on the Dragon 32, moved to 64, the Amiga, and it was the best job ever.
Iain, do you want to say hello?
Yeah, hi. So I don't know whether I should say this here, but I got a Spectrum as my first computer.
Okay.
So when I was about 13 or so, and started playing around with that, knew from that point that I wanted to make games. Didn't know how to get into it, and then one day saw an advert in the local paper saying program I wanted, and it turned out it was Graftgold. Didn't know who Graftgold were at the time. So I got into the interview and saw all these Golden Joystick Awards and posters everywhere, and I thought, this is serious.
We're going to come into a bit more detail. I know that music is a key thread. I'm here to talk about the Dragon 32 because that's where it's at, guys. Any Dragon owners in? It's exactly the same at my school as well.
Did you get all the ladies with that then?
It was very sexy. I actually got beaten up once to have a Dragon 32. That's by the by. That's by the by. Here's the water. Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. Steve, tell us a little bit about growing up. What was it growing up? Am I allowed to say when you were born? Is that the done thing?
When I was born,
1960?
54.
54, was it? Oh, okay. All right. When did computers come into your life? When did you first come across a computer?
Quite early. I must have been 13, 14.
Right.
But there wasn't anything like a micro around then. I went to a technical school, and we used to get on the coach and go to a school called the Royal Liberty in Romford, and it had like a load of telex machines, and you could punch a little program on paper tape, and you took your paper tape and you fed it into this machine. It was about the size of this desk, and I think it had something like 520 bytes of core memory, which were like little magnetic loops with wires going through. And we used to write like little arithmetic programs, and you put your paper tape in, and you get another paper tape out. That wasn't your answer, that was your compiled paper tape. Then you had to put this huge reel of paper tape in that used to fill a whole bin when it came out, and someone had the job of having to reel that back on the reel. And you put your compiled paper tape in to the machine, then you got another paper tape out, and you took that to the telex machine, put it in, you'd get your answers coming out, and it was magic. All this stuff happens, and you know, at the end you get things like 1 times 1 is 1, 1 times 2 is 2.
And was it magic? Was it that thing? I know a lot of us will have an experience where we saw our first computer either in person or in a shop or on telly, and it was like, oh my god, this is really exciting. Did you have that experience?
I was hooked, absolutely hooked. You write this stuff on square paper, you punch it in, and you can make it do things. Because I never wanted to do what we were told to do, so I used to think about things like we were meant to kind of print a graph of signs, and I thought, what happens if you take the sine of a sign and then the sine of a sine of a sine? So I was always thinking out of the box and trying to think, well, how can I get something interesting out of this? But then when I went, I changed schools, and in the sixth form they had a computer club, and I learnt another language, Fortran, which was more a maths language, and it was part of our maths course that we used to do in the lunch hour. And we fascinated our teacher because we started writing a program to produce random numbers. Not random numbers, prime numbers. And we started off with the methods of, you divide it by all the numbers, and we thought, no, you don't have to do that, you only have to divide it by the primes you already found. And we kept kind of, it was me and my mate that were doing this, and we kept thinking of new methods and getting longer and longer lists of the primes. And the maths teacher was absolutely fascinated with what we were doing. In the end, we were using a method called the sieve of Eratosthenes.
The old sieve of Eratosthenes.
Yeah, that's
I'm glad you
right.
brought that up.
And we got this massive list, and the teacher was so proud of it, he put it up. But our fame came when they were trying to raise money for a charity at the school. We said, let's write a programme, and I had the idea, let's do a computer dating programme. Wow. And it was in the days before any micro, so I think it was the first computer dating programme in the world. And we sold these little sheets for 10p, where the kids could, you had to put, what your ideal partner was, and we had sort of nice things and a few silly things like hair green, and whatever. And these things were selling in their thousands, and we couldn't understand it. And what was happening? The kids were buying them and putting all their friends' names in trying to get them like daft matches and whatever. We printed all the results out, and you had the so and so is matched with so and so. Then it was up to you. You were meant to meet them, in the corner of the playground. We made one hell of a, and a lot of them.
Can I buy the second copy of that sequel?
They were putting teachers' names in there.
So different times.
Innocent times. We had this sexy red-haired science teacher. And so
Tinker is what.
Absolutely. So way back in those days, I was kind of thinking of my idea of things that other people hadn't done. I didn't program that actual one, but I was the one who came up with the whole concept of it, and then the guy who was the maths genius in the class did the actual Fortran programming. And we had to punch out all our own punch cards for all the data. We were forever in lunch hours having to put in all these thousands of forms.
But enjoyable though, I would imagine, putting all that stuff in.
It was real fun. And we made loads and loads of money. It was only 10p a go, but I can't remember how many thousands we made for charity. But yeah, that was really, that was probably the best computer success I've ever had.
some of these in a minute. Thank you for that, Steve. Andrew, when did you first see a computer or a video game? What was your experience?
Right, yeah, the first time we had a computer was a similar desk-sized thing that just had a teletyper, no screen, and you could feed it punch cards. And that was appeared in about 3 or 4 maths lessons, but it was only really I didn't get all that interested in it. They didn't teach it to everybody. They picked about the first top 3 or 4 guys, and they had a play with it. I never got to work with that, so and it didn't interest me because there was no screen, and definitely no joystick. So, but it would have been still at school where when we got to being in the 6th form, the upper 6th, and we'd hit 18, we could get out at lunchtime, and there was a place called Guy's Court just down the road from the school. And we don't drink Coca-Cola because we've got to work in the afternoon, so we weren't having a beer or anything. But they had some arcade machines, so that's when I saw Space Invaders for the first time. And they had another one, an older one called it was just called Space Wars, I believe, or Space War. And it was just a huge box, but it was a 2-player game. One ship looked like the Enterprise, and another ship looked like the Asteroids machine, and it was the forerunner of Asteroids, what inspired Asteroids. So we used to go down there at least once a week, maybe twice a week, and just play on these fabulous machines. And that's when I thought, I like this.
So again, that something clicked, and you connected with it on perhaps a more in-depth way than some of your friends did.
Yeah, we could see. When I hadn't really connected the dots that these machines were computers that were related, or were later versions of the machine that they had at school. But I was fascinated by the idea of playing video games. I hadn't yet thought I could make a career out of it or anything like that, but that was my first meeting with the equipment, shall we say. Yeah.
Iain, first time you saw a game or a computer or something?
So the first time, a friend of my mum's brought a computer around to the house. Had no idea what it was. Plugged it in, and there was this amazing program. You start off with a white screen, and it would randomly remove a pixel at a time until the whole screen is black, and then it would go white and start all over again. And I sat there for ages watching this. It was just the coolest thing ever, because this thing in my living room was controlling my telly. And I thought, I need to do this.
And I got 2 young lads, and trying to explain to them the thrill, the first time you could control something on the telly, you could type in a word or a spaceship flew across. Because TV was very passive. You watched it and they broadcast, and suddenly I would have watched that defragging simulator.
Yeah, and so that was around the sort of time that the binatone Pongs and grandstand consoles, and those were coming out. And so suddenly I saw these and thought, you can do more than just a white screen to black. And started playing on friends' ones, and then, as I said, we got the Spectrum at some point, and that was it. I was hooked.
Yeah. So how did you progress from writing a dating thing to taking it to the next stage? Was the next stage games, or were there more steps to go?
I mean, I was on the dole for years, sort of in my later teens, and I saw a government scheme where I could get about 3 times as much as I was getting on the dole if I went and learned how to program COBOL. And I thought, wow, I wouldn't mind being a programmer. I always enjoyed that. So to be a programmer, and to actually get paid for doing it, it was a thorough tech college.
What year was this? This seems very advanced. I guess in the early 70s?
73, I think that was. So I did that, and I managed to get a job in Customs and Excise as a programmer, and I worked there for a couple of years, and until I kind of outgrew them, and they they have a funny system in the civil service. You can be brilliant at your job, but you're not allowed to go up a grade unless you've been there. So, and they wanted me to train a load of people, and they actually interviewed me for it. And then one of the directors, he came out and said, look, I've come out especially to tell you this. Although we agree you're by far the best candidate we've got, we're not allowed to promote you. So you can't have the job. I said, we feel this is terrible, we can't find a way to do it. And I thought, I'm not staying in this organisation. And so basically I left and got a job in industry, and that's when I moved to Witham, and which was the start of it, because if I hadn't have done that, I'd have never met Andrew. But as part of that job in the Customs and Excise, we were looking at business. The people who I was actually training to program were Customs and Excise VAT inspectors who could go into people's premises, but what they were finding, instead of going in and having big IBMs and things like that, it was the start of small businesses having like little computers with their own accounts, and somehow they wanted to verify the programs were doing the correct VAT calculation. So they wanted to be able to kind of put something in their program, and even if it was just a little print statement, that they were there to prove that the algorithm that they were saying, this calculates the VAT, and they'd put print thread or something in it, just to show, it was actually executing. And I was the one who kind of taught them how to do that. So I was teaching them essentially how to program and how to recognise a computer. Well, as part of that job...
what do you mean, how to recognise a computer? They didn't know what it...
Some of them looked like little shoe boxes. It was just the start of micros.
Right.
So they sent me to a show in London, which was one of the earliest computer shows that had micros, and that really opened my eyes, because they had some of the early Z80 kits there where you could buy for a couple of £100 all these bits, and it was a really electronics product, and you have to be able to solve it all and whatever, and connect it to a telly. And I was just gobsmacked, and I came back just with leaflets on just about everything they had in the show, and saying, wow, you just don't know what's around the corner. And everyone in my team was saying, oh, who wants to buy a computer? You can do your accounts better on a piece of paper. They had no concept of games or playing with a computer. All they could see is, well, you'd buy a computer to type a letter on and write your accounts. Well, you could type a letter on a typewriter, so why would you ever want a computer? And they just didn't understand. I was saying, every home's going to have one, and just no one believed me. But when it kind of all changed, by the time I'd left there and got my other job, then the magazines were coming out. There was Sinclair's sort of run of computers. C64 was just around the corner in those days. I think they had a brief splurge of trying to sell it to people as a business machine. It used to be called Commodore Business Machine, wasn't it? The whole world kind of changed, but I could see.
You saw
I sort of saw it coming, so I started programming very, very early on, thinking, I want to do this. So I learned Z80, because there seemed to be a couple of, that seemed to be the cheap machine that everyone was getting. So I got one of those, the very first sort of ZX80, which looked really sci-fi. And I just used to look at it and think, wow, it's the future. It looks like something you see in a sci-fi movie. This little bit of plastic is a computer. And I've been working on mainframes where you go in a room, and you see your program running, you see the tape decks running over there, and then one runs over there, and then the line printer prints over there, which again is like magic. But now I've got this little tiny box which doesn't tell you. You say print Steve, Steve Steve. Everyone does that.
Steve is cool, surely, or skills.
I was aged about 30 then. So So normally you get the rude words as well. Look, I'm print this, it's in writing on my turn.
And how did you two meet? What happened there?
Right, I think that was where Steve was then he was working in a local insurance company, and my friend Steve Rawling was also working in the same company, and Steve Rawling and I were playing in a youth club band. So I was bass, he was lead guitar, and at some point Steve Rawling must have met Steve Turner, who said, "Oh, I play guitar as well." And we introduced Steve to another band that we knew in Witten that was looking for a guitarist. So that would have been the first time we went to it was a tiny little, almost a shed. It was the Conservative Club building. So it was just a shed, really, and they were rehearsing in there. So we took Steve along there, and we just watched him, and we were just going, "How is he doing all that?" So he was on that guitar, and he got the job, no problem.
Yeah.
And we were going, "He's really good." And one day we'll all be in the same band.
We're going to pinch him.
No, it didn't work like that. But I think his band folded at some point, and he was looking for another.
I've got to ask,
position.
what were the names of the bands?
The band you first played in.
I can't remember.
So they went on to be called the Rolling Stones.
The name of the band with Steve Rawlings that we had for the longest was No Class, which was actually quite good because it was kind of did sort of rocky punky things at the beginning, but it became a bit more sophisticated when I joined because real music.
So they dropped the no and it suddenly became
When did
Wait.
you drop the CL then?
Right, okay. What was the conversation about computers? When did you start? When did you get your heads together and think, well, maybe we should be writing games?
Well, I can remember there was a hotel that had an arcade machine, and I used to play that every lunchtime. I can remember one evening Andrew being there, and I think that was the first time that Steve Rawlings had introduced me. And then Steve knew that Andrew used to write kind of games for his IBM system, and we had an IBM system. And one day Steve Rawlings came up to me, and he'd got this box of punch cards, which had sort of a few thousand cards in. He says, "Oh, here's one of Andrew's programs. Can you get it running on our machine?" I did actually give it to the operators. I don't know whether they played around in their spare time, but we didn't run the same software. I think it ran under a system called Kix, which we didn't use in our on our computer. But to Steve actually learned to program and made tons of money in the end. But in those days, he knew nothing of programming. He was always coming up to me with ZX81 listings on the silver paper and saying, "Oh, what have I done wrong here? You can do this." And it's just all where managers sort of looking down at his glasses and why is this bloke interrupting? It was one of these guys. It was the sort of thing at the time where people used to hang their keys from the bell.
Okay.
And he just had a massive bunch of keys, and they used to take the mickey when he came to you could hear him kind of come clanging down the thing, and then he'd be always asking me about computers. But he was always on about Andrew and Andrew talking. So eventually, because we were playing in the same band, we'd start talking computers, and I'd say, "Well, I'm doing this and whatever," and then we'll go into the same pubs and drinking and go around Jed's houses and seeing what he's doing. And I've written my first game, and Andrew just started mimicking the game just on his own on his dad's computer. And
What was the game? What was your first game?
3D Space Wars. And do you know, someone came up to me yesterday and said, "Oh, I got this game. Is this one of yours?" And I said, "That's the first game I ever."
The mistake, you could not put that cassette back in. You tried 3 times to put the
that's
cassette
right.
back in your own
I had a couple of beers by that time. He gave me a cassette, and I was thinking, "How'd you get this back in the box?" I completely
A normal cassette.
First of all, it went in the wrong slot, and I thought, "Oh no, it goes in the other bit," and I put it in backwards, and then I could claim the thing. So
How sure do you prefer a Jeff Minter with that?
yeah, you should have videoed all of that because we could have put it on Twitter.
3D Spacewalk for a first game. That ain't a bad kickoff, is it? That's a great game.
Because I was a bit of an artist and knew how to draw things. I always thought, well, all these games so far I've seen in arcades are all flat. And I thought, if I could do something, at that time it was Space Invaders, I thought if I can just do Space Invaders coming out the screen, I'll have an edge. I think someone on the ZX81, I'd seen a 3D Tyrannosaurus going round a maze. That was probably one of the first sort of attempts of 3D. I thought, I can do better at that. I can do the scene, and you can turn and look in each direction and fly into the screen. And I'll just make the sprites smaller in the distance and make them fly a bit bigger and then appear to change direction as they turn towards you. And the illusion worked. And yeah, it was really the first sort of flying sort of 3D game, sort of really predating things like Elite just. But because it didn't have much of a game, because it was essentially the same thing as Space Invaders, where you had a load of things, you shoot them, and another sheet comes, and you get a load more. But the 3D was a little grab element on it.
Iain, I'm not ignoring you. I know you come into the story a little bit later on, so please don't think I'm ignoring you. Andrew, first computer you had at home, first game.
My dad bought a ZX80, which was a kit, and he put it all together because he was an engineer, so he liked soldering things together. He got that working. He thought it was a little bit rough and ready, so we got the ZX81. And then he got a Dragon 32 because he wanted a real computer that had a proper solid keyboard, and it was at that time that I really got into starting programming. So the Dragon 32 was my real first machine where I was writing code for it. First in a bit of BASIC, and then as soon as I found out about assembler, because I'd worked in a COBOL environment for a mainframe company, and the technical services people used to hide the assembler books when I used to pop down there. They didn't want us application programmers messing about with assembler. So it was a little while before I learned that was really where I wanted to be, because it had much more speed than writing in COBOL.
Yeah.
And I'd written some COBOL games, which are usually you press the button, it does something, and then it waits for you. So it wasn't real time. We cracked running real time eventually, where the game would carry on if you didn't even input something. And that was a real breakthrough. And I thought, yeah, I like this.
And were you with the ZX81, the Dragon? Were you also playing games? Were there games out there that you liked, or were you more focused on the programming and doing stuff yourself?
Because I really like the arcade games, so if somebody had come up with an arcade game on these computers, the Dragon was a little bit behind, I think. I got Donkey Kong on it, the Tom Mix Donkey Kong, and that was a very nicely done product. It looked like the real thing, albeit in black and white, but it looked really good. It moved just like the real arcade game. So yeah, I was starting to buy games as well, but there wasn't that much for the Dragon 32 at that time. It was quite early on, and they were trying to sell that as a bit of a business machine as well, I think, at the time. We had a Tandy shop in Colchester, so I used to go there, and that's where I got a lot of books to read up about how the machine worked. But again, games, the American games that they seemed to sell were quite low in quality, shall we say. Looked very tame. So that's what gave me the feeling that as professional programmers we can do better.
Wow.
Where we thought, well, we always need, we have to write quality stuff. It's all got to work. We can write better games than they are.
So what was the leap from programming at home, looking at each other's work, to Graftgold? What was the journey there?
Well, the journey there was really for me that there were political things going on in the company that I worked for, which were making it very uncomfortable. There was another guy from another division of our company. He was trying to take over our computer centre, and he was just making it hell for our boss. There were people leaving. It wasn't a happy place to work, and Steve left his place to do his own thing, and it was just a case of he he suddenly asked me to go and work for him, and I didn't have to think about that. I just said yes, please, and let's go down the pub. So that was my interview for a Friday evening, really.
Well, you wait till you hear Iain's interview, because it's got a similar vibe to it. Where did the name come from, Graftgold?
I needed a limited company, so I went to my accountant and said, want one, and he just had a couple of off-the-shelf companies, and one had the name Graftgold, and he said, look, don't worry about the name. If you give me a new name within 4 days, I'll put that on the sheet. But and we had a thing, we couldn't think of anything better, so we thought we quite liked that. So we kept it.
It is a good name, and it fits in perfectly with those other computer game names of the time. It sounds very much like it was designed for gaming.
And it was. It's nice and succinct and short. Like you look at Renegade, their proper name of their off-the-shelf company is Bramblewald Computers. We could have been stuck with something like that. So, just someone had a bit of imagination when they put a couple of words, stuck them together, and they kind of rang nicely. And I think US Gold games were just selling there, and I thought it has a ring. There's a lot of publicity about that, and if you have something that kind of has a hint at something else, it kind of almost becomes well known immediately.
First couple of games on cassette, how did you do it? I've spoken to Kevin Toms, football manager, and it was him copying cassettes, making the cover, putting them in envelopes and sending them out himself. What was it like for you at the start?
Well, I did one program like that. When my first program I ever sold commercially was a thing called the Hex Autoloader, which actually allowed you to kind of load programs up onto your computer on the Spectrum, starting off with red statements in BASIC, and I sold 2 copies. So it wasn't I photocopied the manuals while still at work and stapled them all together, and duplicating the tapes was fine. But I kind of learned this and think, well, I might know how to program, but I know nothing about publishing, and instead of finding someone who did know something about publishing and sort of joining with them, well, that's when I started seeking professional publishers, and I wrote off to 3, got offers from 2, and that's when it really took off. And I got my first name signed, and of the publishers, I liked Hewson because he had his own tape duplication plant, so he was in control of one of the scarce sort of resources, so he could order exactly how many copies that he needed to fulfil orders, so he didn't have to try and guess and order 5,000 and get an order 10,000 in and then not be able to meet it and then have to wait and whatever. I thought that would be a big commercial advantage, and I think it was in the early years.
What was he like, Hewson?
He changed, but he was great.
You can be diplomatic, don't worry.
No, he came from a very similar background. He actually went to the same school as me in Rayleigh Swain, it was called, and I don't recall him at school. He was a couple of years above me, and he had a technical background. So as a publisher, it was quite interesting because he'd written books on programming tips and things. So you could go and you could sort of speak the same language, and you're not just getting a marketing spiel. For later publishers we went with, they didn't understand what you're doing, and they didn't understand what it would be like to change certain things in the game. Like one particular thing, when I finished Bushido, and they said, oh, why don't you change it to the London Underground, because the Angels had come over from New York.
Oh, Guardian Angels,
with
gosh.
their red caps
There's
to
a blast
protect
from
the
the past.
underground, and they thought, oh, well, I could change the game. So instead of having samurais in Japan, I could just change a few graphics, and I had people in red caps fighting criminals in underground, and I could do that, within a few days, and then they could run off the publicity. And and that's the sort of thing you get from someone who has no understanding about the software process at all. But Hewson did understand that. Yeah, it's great. And the fact that he manufactured it all on his site, I mean, you could go into his warehouse and he's giving you copies of all the posters and the games, not only your games, but other people's games to have a look at so we could see what was going on.
Andy, what was a typical day like? I'm guessing in the office.
We were different, I think, in that a lot of people a lot of games were being produced by young lads, just in their own homes, probably working at night. You know, we heard tales of Matthew Smith, and they're working all hours, but in unusual times. We both came from a professional background, so we started working 9 to 5. Which was better for me because I can work 9 to 5:30, or 8:30 to 5, I think, and I didn't have to travel much to get there because I only had to walk to Steve's house. But we worked professional hours. We worked in Steve's living room because it was just the two of us. There was no need for an office really, and you know, we just sat down and we got on with our jobs. We weren't messing about or anything. We weren't chatting about the time of the day. We both sat there individually on our desks and we
with coffee in
we got tea at 11 o'clock, 3 o'clock and one at lunch at 1 o'clock I think as well, so we had plenty of tea on the go, and we worked singly most of the time. There were times when I needed to ask Steve how a particular feature worked in a game, but we just sat there working on our own projects and mostly in silence. We didn't have a sound system or anything, and we knew we'd be disturbing each other if we had sound effects running most of the time. So the sound effects used to go in the games quite late. We just worked properly, I think, I would say, and come 5 o'clock I'd usually go home and promptly, and Steve would just go back to, he was straight at home, so he was already there.
I've just seen, we've still got a while to go, and there's going to be signing, and this book is absolutely beautiful, and it's well worth getting a copy. Maybe we'll come to specific games in a bit. I just want to get a bit more. So when did you realise this company is really big, and we're probably going to need some outside help? Was there a moment?
The change kind of started really about the time of Avalon Dragon Talk, Paradoid. Suddenly royalties were coming in. We hadn't, we were just happy if we had enough money to keep doing what we loved doing. And suddenly we had money, and that's why I had to really kind of protect that money by making it a limited company, because otherwise just paying it to us, we'd have paid so much tax in that year. And okay, you can claim a little bit back if you're just an individual, but the real way to do it is to put it as so it sits in a company and then pay us from the payroll just a standard sort of wage plus bonus for when the games did well. And that kind of changed the profile because it gave us like a more professional profile. But the big change came really when we heard news that Hewson was going to collapse, and at the time other companies were sort of starting to take an interest in us, and the salesperson who was second in command at Hewson's left to join Telecomsoft, the Rainbird and Firebird label, and she gave us a phone call and said, look, we're really interested in you coming to work for us. We need product, and what we want to do is to build your team up. We know you'll have a problem, and she gave us a lot of insider sort of information back here and said, look, he's not going to be around, you need to do something now, and we're willing to kind of help you out with our lawyers and things, and we'll publish your existing games as well. So it was kind of like a lifeline franchise, and we'd already knew what was happening at Hewson's because we knew a lot of the staff there, and we were having phone calls almost every day for a while. So, it's terrible, the bills haven't been paid, we haven't had our wages, things are falling apart, there's arguments every day, people are walking. I had almost like a upcoming disaster and a golden opportunity to put in. Look, if you want to, you can ramp up the company. We'll invest in you. We'll back you. And we thought it's now or never. Plus 2 really good staff from Houston, John and Dominic, both said, look, we're leaving Houston, we need a job, we want to come and join you. So I had 2 programmers wanting to come and join me, someone saying, look, we want to build your team up. So it just seemed like a God-given.
What year are we talking about?
So it was 87, yeah.
You joined about 93?
Yeah.
All right, let's, in a short time, fill in the gap between 87 and 93, then we're going to hear from Iain about, and I know I'm asking you to condense a lot of stuff. It's all in the book as well.
But it did happen quickly, because with the investment, we went from 2 people to 7 people. There was one other person that joined that didn't make the grade of the people that I interviewed. But another guy, we had Gary Foreman, who had done an excellent conversion of Rana Rama on the C64, and he only lived up the road in Colchester from us, and he'd done such a good job. We said, look, why don't you come and work in-house? So we knew we had 3 good people that we trusted, because we'd seen Dominic and John's work, and especially Dominic's Uridium. Who'd have thought that you could have got a spectrum to do Uridium? I mean, with all my experience on the spectrum, I thought, oh no, the C64 can clearly do things that this poor little machine will struggle on, and I didn't want to do something that would be second rate. So I'd pass that one over. But he came and he proved, well, I've got ways and means of doing the impossible. So we had those. I had another guy who was writing to me from Ireland, David O'Connor, and sent me an absolutely excellent Spectrum game, kind of Ghost and Goblins type of game. Oh yeah, let's get him on board as well. And so it wasn't just a gradual adding of a few people, it was a quantum leap from 2 people very much sort of working, doing our own thing, to a team of people. And thrown right into it, because they said, oh, we don't want things immediately. Well, you can write 8-bit games, write 4 8-bit games across a couple of SKUs for us. We'll pay you so much a month to do that, but we want you to explore the Amiga and the Atari ST, and knowing that good stuff will come out of it. They just wanted to fund us and grow us as a team. But then about 10 days later, I had a phone call saying, look, we need to come down and see you. We've been let down on an arcade conversion. We need it done in 6 weeks. Do you think you can do it? And I said, well, come down and show us what it is. And they came down and we had a discussion and thought, we'll do it. But if you pay the money, and they offered us more money than we'd sort of seen in about a year, for 6 weeks' work. So that gives us like the thing, and that was the first ever arcade conversion that we did, and it kind of opened up the door then to Rainbow Island, and that opened up the door. Virgin saw what we could do, so we got Off-Road Racer, and then did original games for them as well. So that was really the turning point, though, just having the extra funding. But it was also the start of the doom, because with the money, you lose your control, because suddenly we had to do what they wanted us to do. And okay, we could choose a little bit, but really we were in it to write our own games, and we've had to fight hard to kind of get those in with all the things that we had to do, just to earn money, because the advances that we were paid weren't really enough to run the company. And they even came to me one day and said, oh, we're thinking we're paying you far too much money just for people, as if you write games for free, like people in the bedroom. But I was saying, have you ever costed out what it is for the desks and the office and to maintain the kit that you need, to pay people a wage that because I had people that had come to live in Witton. I've got to give them enough so that they can afford digs and dinners and things like that, to stay alive. Bit of beer in the evening to keep going. And, well, I mean, we didn't pay people a fortune, but when you all add that up, that comes to thousands a month.
Well, let's bring Iain in. Did you have dinner? Did you have some dinner when you got there? Tell us how you got involved. You start 93. How did you get the gig?
Yeah, so I've been at college in Colchester doing a programming course there. It wasn't doing anything with games, so in my spare time I started writing games, but I'm no artist at all. A friend of mine from school was also at college. He was trying to get into the film industry as a special effects artist. And I said to him, it's John Kershaw, I said, can you draw some pictures for me? I would make a game. And that was it, he was hooked as well. We started making a game, and it's the time that Ribena started advertising on the telly with the Ribena characters. We thought, right, we'll try and sell our game to them. So that was all in the process. We were talking to Ribena about licensing this game, and we saw the advert in the paper saying wanted artist and programmer. So it seemed to fit quite well. Happened to be just up the road in Witton. So we applied together, and we both got offered an interview together. And we went up to the office, got shown in, and as I said before, this is where we saw the posters all on the walls and golden joystick boards. And we sat down, and suddenly Steve and Andrew walked into the room, and things got really serious. I didn't know who Graftgold were. All these posters on the wall, they were Hewson games. I only knew them as Hewson. I recognised Steve and Andrew from magazines, and I was nervous. It was an interview, but seeing them, it was even more nervous. They sat down, and the first thing Steve said was, got my CV, said, I see you play drums. John was sat in the corner.
Oh, your microphone's on. You have that one. We'll get this.
Yeah, John sat in the corner for quite a while we talked about music. And eventually we got onto games. But yeah, straight away there was a good connection with music. We then showed our Ribena game. It obviously went down well, and we were both off the shop.
You have to keep talking because I haven't got mine. I'll shout. So it was as straightforward as that. You bonded over music, so you got drums, bass, and guitar. And
Never even played together though.
have you not? Well,
Did we?
yeah. Oh, go on.
Yeah, with Steve Rawlin, we had an afternoon in Witton Town Hall Labour Club. Yeah, so we did play briefly.
I don't remember that.
Well, we've got some instruments for you. You'll be up for that. So, first project you worked on for these two?
Yeah, so the first, Graftgold were moving from a small office to a large office, and so there wasn't room in the old office for both me and John to start at the same time. So they pulled me in first, and on my first day, Steve sat me down and explained that I'd be working on Super Off-Road Racer on the Master System. And then he explained about how the tracks were designed and gave me some graph paper. And I'm sitting there thinking, they've brought the wrong person in, I'm the programmer, not the artist. But after a while, Steve said, it's a bit more technical than we'd want for an artist, so which is why we've got you in. So I started off designing a track for this game. And so yeah, that was my first game. I helped out a little bit on play testing other things that were being developed at the time. And then my first full game was Fire Red.
Wow. What do you remember about that? We're going to dive into the games in a bit. Well, dive into the games now, I think, but what do you remember about that?
So it started out as a project that Jason Page was working on the Master System. So I've been working on the Amiga, the Ribena game was on the Amiga, and Steve said that they wanted to take this prototype that Jason had been doing, move it off the Master System onto the Amiga. So I took that over. There's some things that the Master System, the Mega Drive can do better than the Amiga could, and so we were struggling a bit with it. And so the game design evolved over time, and eventually we changed from driving a tank around to the robot that we had in Virocop, which was great for me because one of my favourite games on the Spectrum was Quasitron, which was one of Steve's games with a small robot, and suddenly I'm in a company working with two of my heroes, working on a product that I loved, just rebranded as Virocop this time.
I'm guessing you guys may have heard this before. Andrew, what's it like hearing Iain's experience, looking at you two as heroes? What's it like hearing that?
It's only for this book that I realised that people felt that way, to be quite honest with you, because we're just two ordinary chaps that were doing stuff that we loved, and we didn't realise that we got this esteem, if you like, from other people. So yeah, it was, and it's throughout the book. Lots of different people are saying, yeah, wow, and we're just two ordinary guys. We're just doing a job.
So you're aware that the passion and the love and the affection people have for your games?
I am, since I came to this event last year.
Really?
We had no
time?
idea, really.
Wow.
No idea, really, because our job is all done in an office.
Yeah.
We get to see publishers. We got to see journalists usually when we take the games around, but we didn't get to see the people that are actually enjoying the games. We're disconnected from you guys, really, and it's so great to have events like this now.
You've got people sat on the floor to come and say, we're going to take questions from them in a bit, and I really hope you know there's a wave of love and affection is going to come.
It's totally felt, and thank everybody for it.
And publishers like to keep us in the background because they pretend, they're the ones that have produced this game, and one of their job titles of one of their people is producer. And what do? They drink cups of coffee and phone you up a couple of times a week if you got the latest version, and they haven't done anything that's actually contributed towards that game. We designed the games, we sweated blood trying to get them done on time and to the quality. And
it's like Iain saying he thought they were Houston games. That's what he knew those games as. I'm gonna fire out some names of games. Anyone jump in with any memories or anything you've got, and if you haven't got any memories, these things happen a lot. I don't remember the 80s very well, so I'm just going to read some, and then we'll pick some from the book, and then we're going to open it up to you. So get your questions ready. But let's go in with a big one. Uridium. What do you remember about that? The writing, the developing, the reaction to it.
Well, what I remember, because I was the first one to see it, and I'm thinking, wow, that machine can do things which I just can't hope to do. So that was when I first became a little bit jealous. I was stuck on the Spectrum, and I realised that really I need to get off, but I couldn't because that was where I was making my money. But the divide to me at that moment became enormous.
When I was developing it, I just knew that I wanted to move up from the 25 frames a second and the 17 frames a second that I'd got in Gribblers and Paradroid. I just wanted 50 frames a second, which is trying to live up to all of Jeff Minter's games, because everything he did was fast and flash. I just knew I had to try and catch up with him. So I just stripped down everything that the game didn't need to do to have enough time to be able to scroll that screen nice and smoothly at 50 frames a second, and show it off by having you go much faster than you need to go, and everybody thinks, oh yes, so you have to scroll it fast. No, just take it easy. It's a Ferrari, you don't have to drive at 170 miles an hour down every single road. Have a look first, come back. But yeah, it was just, I just put it together, and made sure that I got 50 frames a second, and kept it simple. I had to simplify a few things, and yeah, I'm just very pleased that it all did work first time. Didn't really have to change anything. Got 50 frames of animation, as I pointed out last night to our man down here. 50 frames of animation for that manta going around, which is more frames than most people were using for one object. And I just try to push in various different directions so that whilst something has to give, usually, we couldn't put 32 levels in there, we'd run out of space. But if you can push in some directions, you can get something that shines, I think. So I just love putting that together.
Avalon.
To me, that was the game that I always wanted to write, and it was only after 3 games I kind of had the capability, but I still think it was just so far ahead of anything around the time in terms of game design and what it can do, and given the limitations of the machine. And I still wonder how I did it. I disassembled the code of Dragon Talk a couple of years ago and recovered the source. I downloaded my own game from the internet, because there never was any source, because I wrote on squared paper and then assembled it myself into hex and typed the hex code in. How could I be that patient? I just don't know how I could do that. But I'm thinking, wow, how did you do that? That's so simple, that idea, but that allowed me to do all these kind of things. But it really was my analysis and design background from being a professional programmer. I kind of worked on the data structures in the game and got the maximum kind of stuff out of the minimum of data. And I'm still, that is probably the work that I'm proudest of.
Turns out we're running out of time, and I really want to get some questions from you. So, Faith, you're going to go and chase people for us, please? Thank you.
Come on. Guys, one question if you can.
A question for Andrew. How much credit do you give to the ZZAP diary in sort of creating momentum for Paradroid? Because as a reader of that, it became my favourite bit of the magazine. And when obviously the game was coming out, I had to have it. And I remember so much of that diary, and the Morpheus one as well. So were you aware that you were sort of setting fire to the imagination of a group of 14 and 15-year-old boys?
Yeah, it's a great question. I didn't realise at the time, I don't think, because it was just an experiment that Chris Anderson had suggested to us, would we like to do it? And that was when I went up there to take Griblies in to get it reviewed. And they said, we'd like somebody to write a diary of a game. Do you think you're up to it? And we were just happy that we were getting paid by the word to do it. Because all I had to do was spend 10 minutes every night writing down what I'd done that day, type it up once a month. And in fact, as it turned out, I then had to print it off and post it off to them because that's all you had. I have been told many times since that by people like yourselves that how you got inspired to go into IT and even games by having read my diaries. I had no idea at the time when I was writing them. It was again just a joy to write them. I'm just so pleased that people got more out of it than I expected.
Let's get another one. Faith is at the back.
Hello, is that working? First of all, I hope you're all aware of the love for your games now, even though it's come late. I hope you're very aware how tangible it is. I was really interested in what you just said there, Andrew, about being aware of what Jeff Minter was doing, thinking I must get my code really quicker. So my question is, how aware were all of you of what other coders, contemporary coders, were doing, and how did that was there like friendly rivalry? Was there unfriendly rivalry, which is of course what we'd actually like to hear about. I just wondered whether, because you said you're working sort of on your own, I just wondered how aware you were of your contemporaries and how did that maybe spur you on?
Yeah, because we were kept in isolation. It was only really when we went to shows and the ZZAP challenges, so it's down to ZZAP again, when we did the programs challenges, I could get to go to Ludlow and spend the day there with Tony Crowther, Jeff Minter, Paul Oakes, Archer McLean, and that's when we became friends really with them. And we there were no punch-ups. We all liked a beer, and we all liked to talk about our games. So it was, I think Tony Crowther had just written Trap, and he'd got a Sprite multiplexer in there, and he delighted in telling me how it worked. Which, of course, then I implemented in Morpheus and wrote about in my diary. So no, we used to phone each other up, as more in the Amiga days, because we knew the 64 pretty well. There's a limited amount of stuff, but the Amiga foxed us quite a bit, so we used to phone each other. But that's all we had. We didn't have the internet, we couldn't email each other. Yeah, so it was down to good old ZZAP, really, for me, that got us all together. And no, there was I don't know of anybody that was bad mouthing anybody else, really. We were driving each other to better things.
One more question? We've got one more, Faith?
Hi. Back in the day when you were writing games like Uridium, which other games do you wish that you'd written that were written by other programmers? And can I just add, I think at the time as a teenage lad playing Uridium, I probably wanted to kick you around the room, but right now I'd probably just like to shake you by the hand and say thank you.
The amount of times I crashed that spaceship.
What was the question? That threat of violence distracted me. What was the question?
Yeah, games that you'd seen back in the day that you wish I
wish you'd done. Let's get one quickly from each of you, and then we'll...
Night Law, I think, that, to me, I thought, how did they do that? and to learn now that was shelved for ages because they thought it would make all the other stuff look rubbish. And really, that's what triggered me. I've got to learn how to do that, and Quasitron come out of that.
Andrew, one you wish you'd done?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. I used to play games at lunchtime quite a lot. Boulder Dash I played, Manic Miner, Sheep in Space. So it's got to be a Minter game, hasn't it? I would have liked to have written Sheep in Space, I think.
Iain, is there one game you look at and go, man, I wish I'd done that?
Yeah, back on the Spectrum, it's Quasitron.
Right.
And I put all of the hours playing into that. Yeah, loved that one. Then on to the Amiga, any Bitmap Brothers game. Yeah.
Honestly, it's such a thrill for me to sit up here and listen. I'm sorry I hogged it a bit and you didn't get as many questions. I'm sure they'd be very happy to chat to you throughout the day, as long as you're shaking hands and not punching them. It's been an absolute thrill. The book is going to be is over there. Honestly, it's so worth it. Iain, you've not signed this one. I need you to sign this, please. And they will be doing signings and they're happy to chat. But let's have a round of applause for Steve.
Dragon Talk, I enjoy doing more. Guys, you're going to need all the technical stuff came there.
It always felt like it was something a little bit more special.
Now you're thinking, so you want my name on here?
Yes, please, just so we know.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh man, yeah. Thank you.
Anyway, hello Mr. Banksy. How are you doing? I can't do that anymore. If I did that, I might get... I don't think I should either. Oh wow. Thank you so much. Got the Kickstarter back away.
Thank you. That's lovely, thank you. Oh, yeah. Isn't it funny?
No, just for the kick. It's not for the... I've ordered the PDF.
That's it. Not by me.
No, I don't see me, but you will see you.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose you've got to get the angle
left-handed is that you want you need to learn to write vertically.
Sorry, Andrew. Sorry, could you just?
Come on, Andrew, grin.
Can I just say a personal thank you? Paradroid, my all-time favourite 64
Thank you very much.
Can't. The number of hours spent, pleasure playing it.
And how far did you get through?
I think I did about 5 ships or something like that. And I think I told you on Twitter once, I did manage to go from the 0.1 influencer to 999.
Yes, it's very risky.
Perfect sort of like layout. So once again, thank you very, very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Cheers.
Should we tell people we're doing a new Uridium yet, or is that a bit too soon?
Well, I've talked to Steve and he still thinks that I'm going to write it for him.
Yeah, well, I'm going to ask you now, basically.
No, it's part of the Kickstarter.
Have we piqued your interest a little bit?
Yeah, because...
Have you seen the drop? Well, you've seen the drops and you played that. You know that the caliber is there, the coding and the graphics.
Well, yes, because the